Let's bring into the conversation Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Michael Gove, who joins me now. Mr Gove, good morning. Thank you for coming on the show, sir. When you hear that a group of scientific advisors and others are concerned that the Dominic Cummings affair might have dented the government's message about the importance of staying alert and keeping lockdown, do you concur?
No, I don't. I think that some of those people who were critical of Dominic made their criticisms before his statement yesterday. I think that people who've had a chance to hear and to read his statement will understand why he acted as he did. Of course, there'll be some people who will disagree and some who will continue to criticise, but I think fair-minded people will understand that he acted in a way which was designed to reduce the risk of any infection spreading while also protecting his family.
You say reduce the risk of infection spreading, but because he embarked on a 260-mile car journey, that's not really reducing risk, is it, Mr Gove?
It is, because the Cummings family, Dominic, his wife and his son, were in that car and then in a house where they maintained a distance from others throughout. It might not have been possible to maintain the same degree of distance from others at home in London. So as a result, he was able to ensure that the unit of his family was not in danger of spreading infection to others.
We must move on to more important matters, some would argue, but presumably he needed to get fuel at some point, so he's going to expose himself then, unless he's got an oil tanker behind him.
I think he had a full tank. I'm a Nissan Qashqai driver, or I used to be. I know that on a full Nissan Qashqai tank, you can make that journey.
Okay. When you say you used to be, what's happened to your car?
We're slimmed down to a one-car family.
Oh, I see. And yours is an electric car, is it, or something? Is that what you're in now?
No, my wife has a Fiat.
Oh, right, very good. Now, let's move on to another. It's interesting you'd be talking about cars because, as I understand it, as of June the 1st, car showrooms will be open. Well, nothing beats the coronavirus than buying a car, does it? What's led you to move to that?
Well, it's part of a phased programme of opening retail. As we get the reinfection rate down, we can begin to take cautious steps to make sure that life returns to something like normal. And one part of that is making sure on the 1st of June that retail outlets where you're broadly outdoors or it's very easy to maintain social distancing should open. And so outdoor markets are going to be allowed from the 1st of June, car showrooms as well, and then all what's been deemed non-essential retail from the 15th. So it's a step-by-step approach.
Right, but I still can't invite members of my family to my home.
Well, again, it is the case that we are making sure that you can see members of your family out of doors. If something happens out of doors, the risk of infection is less. But it's also been the case that shops have been open now, supermarkets, food stores, for quite some time, in order to allow people to get the essentials. We all know that as we move from a stricter lockdown to the easing of some of these measures, that there will be steps along the way, lines will have to be drawn, and at any given point you can always say, well, I wish that this activity was on this side of the line and that activity was on that side of the line. But I think most people recognise that we need to move in a step-by-step way. And one of the key issues is in a retail environment, we're unlikely to be spending a long time adjacent to another. The nature of the interactions, provided we maintain social distancing, is consistent with reducing infection.
But you see the surprise here, that I could arrange to meet my sons in Dorothy Perkins or Topshop or the local Fiat dealership, but they can't come to my house.
Well, I think it would be the case that if you...
So I can have a chat with them in the dealership. I mean, it does seem rather strange, Mr Gove.
You could have a chat with them at the moment in the park or on the street or in any outdoor space. Of course, there are restrictions, but and it is difficult. I know. I'm one of many people who hasn't been able to see their parents, but step by step, we can begin to restore life to normal. At any given point, it's always possible and legitimate to say, I'd rather this were open than that were open. But we've taken scientific advice and made judgments about what we think is helpful. And one of the things that's helpful here is that it's helpful to get people back to work. Opening more stores, car showrooms, non-essential retail is not just about providing people with services that they've lacked. It's also about making sure that people who often people who are not paid well or haven't been paid as well as they should have been can get back to work.
How concerned are you that in some instances some of these folk have been at home earning 80% of what they used to earn? They've actually rather liked sitting in the back garden or wherever they might be in the sunshine. It's going to get difficult to get them to put the shoulder to the wheel again.
Well, the furlough scheme is there to support businesses and to support people. I think all of us would rather be at work than not. But the furlough scheme
all of
is
us,
there.
Do you think, Mr Gove? You don't think that there might be resistance from some people to get them back to work? There's no government planning or modelling that might suggest that?
No, of course there will be some people who will have health or other conditions that may mean that it's not appropriate for them to go back. And of course people will want to ensure that the workplace is safe. But certainly, the overwhelming majority of us want to be at work, want to be contributing, want to be, leading purposeful lives. That's human nature.
And staying with the idea of this particular lockdown, when do you imagine that the country as a whole will be open? So pubs, restaurants, everything, bars?
It's going to be more difficult with pubs, restaurants and bars in full. What I hope we may be able to see is people being able to have outdoor hospitality so that you can enjoy a drink in the garden of a pub. Or that you could eat outdoors in a cafe. But again, we need to maintain social distancing, and we're exploring how we can do that in a safe way. But I think it's going to be, very, very difficult for us to return to any of us standing at the bar or any of us mingling in a cafe indoors in the way that we have in the past.
June the 1st is also meant to be the time when we see some years in primary schools return, and teachers, those who have not been working in schools, as we know many have, but those teachers return. But there is some resistance from some trades unions. How confident are you that the right number of pupils will return next week, Mr Gove?
I'm confident that pupils will return, that I recognise that teachers' unions, and I respect their desire to look after their members, have expressed some concerns, but I think those concerns are being successfully addressed. We know that great school leaders and local authorities are committed to providing as many places as possible, and you're right, it's children in reception year 1 and year 6 whom we want to get back first of all. I'm sure there will be 1 or 2 occasions where not every child is able to return, but we'll work pragmatically to ensure that the maximum number can.
And a teacher who does not go back to work, should he or she face sanctions?
Well, again, there will be teachers who may, for a variety of reasons, face particular additional health risks. I think, every teacher that I know loves their job and will want to be, if they possibly can be, in the classroom. But of course there will be exceptions for health and other reasons.
You may recall, I'm sure you do, the Prime Minister said this last week.
We will have a test, track and trace operation that will be world-beating, and yes, it will be in place by June the 1st.
Well, by my calculations, that gives you, all of today and then 3 more days. You confident you'll hit that target?
Yes, and I think it's also important to say, people have understandably before said, are you going to meet this target? Are you going to meet this deadline? And we met targets on increasing the number of tests and providing the additional numbers of people required for this contact tracing exercise. So yes, I am.
And it will be able to be downloaded then? The app will be ready to go on Monday?
The app is just one component in making sure that we can have effective contact tracing. And in many of the countries that have had the most effective contact tracing, they haven't had an app, but it's a very, very valuable part of the system.
And why did we not go for the type that was seen in Germany and South Korea and Singapore? We went for a different model, one that's been tried in India. Why didn't we go for a model that was well known and tried and trusted?
Well, there are different technical criteria here, and the tech experts believe that this is the best model. I'm not a tech expert, but it certainly seems to me, on the basis of what I've been told, that this is a robust model.
You're a former newspaper man. I'm sure you saw one of the Sunday newspapers this weekend. 4 pages, a fairly damning dossier on the inefficiencies and the incompetence at the heart of government in dealing with coronavirus. You are at the very heart of it. Did you recognise that?
No, I didn't. I think that in due course, it's absolutely right that we look back and reflect on what went right and what didn't go right during our response. At the moment, we're concentrating on trying to make sure that we do the right thing every day, and that means, of course, looking at the evidence, adjusting as the scientific evidence adjusts, and making sure that what we do is in line with that.
And of course, things that didn't go right perhaps is the care home sector. Is it fair to suggest that that might be one area that needs review?
I think there is a big question about how we look after and support people in social care, and I know that after the pandemic, the effect of the pandemic reduces, that all of us will want to make sure that we get the very, very best possible care for our elderly, and we do need to look at the system in the round.
OK, just before I let you go, the range of a Land Rover Discovery, such as Mr Cummings drives, is around 524 miles, so it would not have been able to get to and from Durham. So he has had to get petrol somewhere, hasn't he, Mr Gove?
I think he got petrol on the way back.
Right, so then he would have risked infecting other people.
No, because by the time he drove back, he was no longer infectious, and indeed medical advice had been given saying that he could return to work.
Right. Would you go on a 60-mile round trip to test your eyesight?
I have, on occasions in the past, driven with my wife in order to make sure that... what's the right way of putting it?
I'm staggered. I don't know how you're going to get out of this one, but it's going to be fun.
No. I think people who know me would know that I'm not an authority on driving, and that I'm not the best person in the world to ask detailed questions about driving.
No, I've merely asked you if you've ever been on a 60-mile round trip to test your eyesight, and you said you had. I mean, why not go to Specsavers?
Well, I've subsequently got it. No, the point that I was seeking to make is that I'm not an authority on driving. As someone who took 7 attempts to pass their driving test, I'm not going to pass judgment on other people's driving decisions.
Well, I wish you safe journey from our studios, however you depart. Thank you.